But
Can you imagine waking up before dawn so you can do your hair and makeup and put on a pretty dress and then go freeze your ass off outside just so you can watch one hot guy walk by?
and not
Those
even talk to
ladies.
him, just watch.
Yes. Those are some thirsty ladies. Okay, they need to find a hobby or something.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Booked on Fantasy podcast. We, Addison and Lorraine, are two best friends who explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Today is our very first episode for Crown of Midnight. Woo! So far, these first few chapters felt somewhat similar to TOG as far as the structure and the pacing goes, but Addison did confirm for me that it really picks up in the next set of chapters that we're going to get into.
Oh, yeah.
But regardless, of course, we get new information revealed to us, and that's always interesting. So I'm excited to dive into it. As a quick reminder, we will be discussing chapters 1 through 6 specifically, but it is likely that references to Throne of Glass will come up as well. If you have not read TOG and you don't want any spoilers, please pause here, go catch up, and then come back when you're ready. Furthermore, we would like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we will have explicit conversations. Explicit language or potentially triggering topics may be discussed, so please be mindful of that and adjust accordingly. Okay, housekeeping. Today we are covering chapters 1 through 6, and then next week's episode we will cover chapters 7 through 13. So if you're reading along with us, that is what we will get to next. In addition, we are continuing with our House of the Dragon Season 1 recaps. So far, we have covered 7 episodes now. So if you are a fan of that series or you just want another show to watch, then definitely check those out. And we're under 20 days now until Season 2 premieres. So if you want to catch up, now's the time to
Now is the time.
watch everything and then be ready. Last but not least, Addison, where are we at with our Onyx Storm countdown?
Okay, so today, the day we're recording this, is Wednesday, May 29th, and there are 237 days until Onyx Storm is released.
Yay!
We're getting there. We're getting there. Anyways,
Tuck it away.
Crown of Midnight for now.
Exactly. That is all for our housekeeping updates. So on to the episode. The general structure of our episodes will remain the same. First, we will have our book report to summarize the chapters. Next, we will analyze each chapter and ask questions or offer fun theories and predictions. And last, we will share our favorite moments from the chapters covered as well. So with that being said, Addison, please give us the book report.
Happily. Chapter 1. We kick off this book with Celaena on the job. On a stormy night, Celaena stealthily moves through Lord Neryl's house and silently makes her way to his bedroom. Just as Celaena raises her sword above her head, Lord Neryl's eyes fly open. And scene. Chapter 2. We find ourselves back in Riftfold at the Glass Castle. Celaena carries out the deadly dance she finds herself forced to dance after each mission. Bring the king proof of her kill. The king seems satisfied with the dismembered body parts Celaena provides as proof, and he informs us there's a growing rebel movement in Rifthold, and he wants Celaena to deal with it. And by deal with it, I mean kill them all. But he will only give her one name at a time. To Celaena's surprise, the first name is someone she recognizes from her past, Archer Finn. As Celaena departs, Dorian prepares for a council meeting, but he can't help contemplating how different Celaena is now from the girl he knew mere months ago. He wonders idly if Celaena only used him to ensure her victory as the king's champion. Chaol follows Celaena as she disposes of the severed limb so he can debrief Celaena. Chaol expresses that he worries about Celaena when she is gone. Celaena tries to brush him off, but Chaol doesn't give up so easily, unlike Dorian.
Hey. That just registered in my head. I was like,
okay. He hugs her tightly, but quickly breaks it off when he realizes just how horrible she smells. Celaena is ready to rest after her most recent mission, but she can't help but think about the events of the past few months. The other 4 men's deaths were easy enough to fake, but she has no idea how she's going to be able to fake Archer Finn's death. All she knows is she better figure it out, and fast, because she's in the middle of a very deadly game. Chapter 3. Celaena is having yet another nightmare about Cain and the Ritter Rack. Celaena awakes with a start and realizes she is safe and it was only just a nightmare. Celaena and Nehemia are in the game park playing fetch with Fleetfoot and discussing Celaena's most recent orders to dispatch Archer Finn. Nehemia expresses to Celaena that she is deeply troubled by the worsening conditions at the Calcula work camp and that the king refuses to meet with her about it. She is beginning to grow restless and wants to know when information gathering becomes a stalemate and acting should be prioritized. Chapter 4. Chaol and Celaena are on their morning run. Chaol still can't seem to shake the guilt he feels for his participation in Kane's death and asks Celaena if it ever gets any easier. Celaena reassures him that what he did wasn't dishonorable and she will always be grateful to him for saving her. Celaena and Chaol make their way back to the castle through the throng of ladies in the garden, just waiting to catch a glimpse of the hot Chaol, but are interrupted when they run into Dorian and his cousin, Lord Roland Havilliard. After a brief interaction, Celaena leaves the conversation feeling slightly homicidal, but thankfully it's only directed at Roland. Dorian watches as Celaena and Chaol depart, and he can't help but feel the pangs of jealousy. He also contemplates why his father would bring Roland onto the council and what Roland's true intentions are in coming to the Glass Castle. Celaena returns from shopping to find Dorian in her room. They have a brief conversation about how they want to remain friends, but it seems that they just can't quite bridge the distance between them after their breakup. Chapter 5. Celaena is on the job. She trails Archer Finn through the city and can't help but remember the last time she was in Rifthold. Only then, Sam was by her side, and in the evening she went back to the Assassin's Keep, not the Glass Castle. Celaena and Chaol focus on their work in companionable silence in Chaol's bedroom. Unable to focus on her work, Celaena asks Chaol why he hates Roland so much. Chaol tells her he doesn't really wish to discuss it. Celaena works up the courage to ask Chaol about Rorik Farron, the crime lord who was responsible for Sam's death and played a role in her capture. Chaol reveals that Farron was murdered 9 months ago by Wesley, Arobyn's personal guard. Celaena tells Chaol some details regarding Sam's death, but can't quite bring herself to tell the whole story. In an act of solidarity, Chaol tells Celaena about Lithian and what happened with her and Roland. After their heart-to-heart, Chaol walks Celaena to her rooms, and she tells him that if Lithian picked Roland over Chaol, then she was the greatest fool who ever lived, and Addison strongly agrees. Celaena is unable to sleep and decides to go to the library to take her mind off of things. She encounters a strange hooded figure that makes Celaena's amulet glow. Before she can react, the figure is gone, but she can't shake the feeling of dread that follows. Chapter 6. Celaena, still shaken from the interaction with the hooded figure outside of the library, decides to go to Elena's tomb to get some answers. She makes it to the tomb and decides she'd rather not receive another cryptic mission from Elena and decides to leave. Just as she's about to depart, she is startled by an unknown voice. We are introduced to Mort, who is, I shit you not, an ancient magical door knocker. In a comical and whimsical conversation, we learn that Elena is recuperating from her massive magic use, but she did leave a message for Mort to pass on. Celaena's work is not yet done, and she has much work to do to fulfill her destiny and save Aurelia from the evil that threatens everyone and everything.
Dun, dun, dun. Mort. I love Mort.
Yes, Mort is my new Philippa. I do still love Philippa, but I like Mort better, honestly.
I know. I'm disappointed that we haven't gotten to Philippa again yet, but hopefully she comes back.
I'm sure she will.
All right. On to the analysis and our questions and theories.
So to kick off our first chapter, it was really short. And by really short, I mean it was a page and a half. So not a ton of analysis here, but I did have 2 thoughts I wanted to share. The first is, in our last episode, in our final review of the book, I did talk about how I would like to see Celaena showcase her skills a little more because I found that very engaging. And so I did like, we just get this brief glimpse of Celaena in her element doing what she does best. And so the description of that was really, really cool. Then obviously we know ultimately she does not kill Lord Nerol. But of course, when I was reading this for the first time, I did not know that. So my question to you, Lorraine, is did you think that she actually killed him and was going to fully fulfill her mission from the king? Or did you actually suspect that she was going to work it out in some way?
Oh, I thought she killed him.
Yes, me too.
I thought she really was going to. I was like, it makes sense. She has to do these things. But then I was like, oh, maybe I should have had a little more faith in her.
I know. I felt the exact same way because later when it's revealed in the set of chapters that she's been faking it, I was like, I should have known that she is our hero and she has a good heart and she couldn't just kill mercilessly. But I really thought that she did it.
I did too. I was like, oh, okay, she's jumping right back in.
Yes. Whoops.
Oh, well, it's fine. I think most people probably did, right? Because she's
Yeah.
their orders, and it is really risky of her not to actually kill them should they ever appear again. And the king finds out that all these people he sent her out to dispose of are still alive. Not great for her.
I guess I thought because the king was so explicit with his threat that if she
Mhm.
didn't fulfill her duty, that he would kill everyone she loves, that Celaena, although she wouldn't want to do it, she would basically sacrifice those people to save Chaol, Dorian, Nehemia, etc. So I guess that's kind of why I thought
Right.
that she would have went through with it. But I'm glad she didn't.
Yeah, same. I'm very glad that she figured out a way around that. So, all right, something that I noted as I was reading this chapter, it's dark and stormy outside. She's in a dark cloak and she's hiding in the shadows, right? So the quote says, concealed beneath a black mask and hood, she willed herself to melt into the shadows to become nothing more than a slip of darkness. And previously throughout Throne of Glass, there were a couple of mentions of the queen of the underworld, right? Or Celaena being dark and dangerous in some manner. Plus, one of the books in this series is literally titled Queen of Shadows. And I just feel like this is potentially a little bit of foreshadowing of what Celaena will become or be associated with in the future. I could be wrong, but I wanted to note that because I thought it was interesting how she was described.
Yeah.
So,
When I read that, I wondered if it was foreshadowing about her potential future magical abilities. We know it's a not uncommon trope in fantasy for people to be able to wield shadows, manipulate shadows, use them. We see that in Fourth Wing. It's discussed in Crescent City. So I wondered if maybe somehow her powers would manifest in a way that she can use the shadows or the shadow world or something to that effect.
oh, that would be interesting. I guess we'll
don't
see.
know.
We'll see if this becomes anything. Here we are theorizing.
Off to a good start.
Oh, yeah. So the other note that I had from this chapter, we learned that she is at Lord Nerol. Is that how they said it? Nerol?
Lord
Nerol's manor in Belhaven. Celaena notes that Lord Nerol is only 35, and she asks herself what had they done to offend the king so gravely that he wanted them dead. And I was like, excellent question. I want to know too. Does he have some kind of power? Maybe he opposes the king in some way, and then the king needs to get them out of the way. Are they part of this rebel movement? Somehow, I just obviously have a lot of questions about why the king wants these particular people dead. And then my last note, we don't have very much information about the location, Belhaven specifically. The only thing we really know from the previous book is that Celaena, under her champion's tournament name, Lillian Gordana, was a jewel thief from Belhaven. So I think that's all the information we get about that place, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else revealed to us thus far about it.
Maybe it'll come up again, not sure, but for now, it's another location on the map, so to speak, that we've been introduced to a little more.
Yeah, I'm just happy we left the glass castle, even if it was briefly.
Okay, moving on to chapter 2. Celaena is back in Rifthold, and she's meeting with the king in this council chamber to present proof of her task. Dorian is there as well, and so is Chaol. And at first, she's looking at Chaol, right? And she notes that for all the expression he showed, she might as well have been a stranger. But that was expected, and it was just part of the game they'd become so skilled at playing these past few months. So this stood out to me because immediately I was very relieved to know that she hadn't become completely isolated from Chaol yet. I wasn't quite sure about what was going on between her and Dorian at this point, but it was nice for me to know that she was at least able to maintain that friendship with Chaol while they still simultaneously put on this front of distancing themselves because Chaol is still the captain of the guard and Celaena is now employed by the king as his personal assassin. So it's important that they still create this impression that they're not as close as they actually are, at least in front of the king.
Yeah.
Next, the king asks, is it done? And Celaena throws a mangled head at him, which was kind of gross.
Yeah.
And then she also gives the king a seal ring. She says, here's his seal ring. The king's lip curled, but he pried the ring off the stiff finger. I was genuinely hoping that these rings would have some sort of deeper meaning to the plot.
Oh God, not this again, all
No,
right.
no. I mean, it didn't end up meaning anything, but it would be kind of interesting if those rings all had a special power. But then, of course, we learned that it was just as proof of confirmation that she killed him. So didn't turn out to be anything, but
Well, I will say in your defense, we have discussed many times how rings do have some significance, and it's even mentioned again in this chapter. I think the king waves his hand and the obsidian ring catches the light. So I do still feel there is something important about rings, just not perhaps the signet rings.
oh, sad. Anyway, yeah, red herring alert. Probably after that, the king gives Celaena his next assignment, and he gives us some information that is notable as well. He says, there is a growing rebel movement here in Rifthold, a group of individuals who are willing to do anything to get me off the throne, who are attempting to interfere with my plans. Your next assignment is to root out and dispatch them all before they become a true threat to the Empire. My first question, as soon as I read this the first time, was, is Nehemia involved with this particular movement? But my outstanding question remains, which is, what plans is the king exactly referring to? I suppose that's the eternal question that plagues us throughout this book.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
We have like our suspicions about it being related to a greater evil magic plot with word gates and whatnot. But so far, we haven't really gotten any more concrete evidence to support that theory. So we're left just wondering, are the rebels purely against the king? Are they doing something bigger than that? Well, now, obviously, what is the king actually doing? To go along with that, Kale and Dorian were staring at the king now, as if this were the first they were hearing of this too. That was a thought that Celaena had. So the king is definitely very secretive about his plans. I still want to know, who does he actually work with? And who does the king trust to involve in his plans, if anyone at all? Parrington is probably involved to some extent, but I'm sure there's things he doesn't tell him about either.
Yeah. Really, the only character we're introduced to that clearly is in the know with the king is Parrington. I did think, and still do think thus far in the book, that Roland perhaps is involved in whatever's going on. And that's why the king brought him. But we'll get to that when we get introduced to Roland.
So next, the king says, there are several people on my list of suspected traitors, but I will only give you one name at a time. This castle is crawling with spies. And Chaol stiffened at that. So before I kept reading on, I felt like this may have been a little bit of a clue that Chaol may potentially be connected or involved. To what degree, I don't know. Nor do I know if it was with the rebel movement specifically, or if it's just because of his relationship with Celaena. But what is interesting, because the king is obviously very alert. How is he finding these spies? Like, what are his means of finding out who's spying on him too?
Yeah. That's funny, because I took it the other way. I took that Chaol stiffened because he's the captain of the guard and he feels the responsibility to protect the king and his interests. So he doesn't like hearing that, because it reflects poorly on him, because he's not doing his job if there are spies in the castle. That's how I took it. But I could definitely see it being the other way. I hadn't thought about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the fact that he's concerned about how good of a job he's doing either. But again, either option. The king next informs Celaena that her next target is going to be Archer Fenn. And Celaena is shocked by this. She knew Archer from the past when he came to train at the Assassin's Keep. She also doesn't believe that Archer could be involved. So she has an internal thought where she says what she really needed time for was to figure out how Archer had gotten tangled up in this mess and whether the king was telling the truth. If Archer truly were a traitor and a rebel, well, she'd figure that out later. So I did have this thought that perhaps the king is just getting rid of assassins. Because like if he knew Archer, then Archer is an assassin, obviously, if Celaena knows him.
Pause. Okay, it's funny you say that, because the first time I read it, that's what I thought. But then in a reread, and also when I read ahead in the chapters, Archer is not an assassin. He is a courtesan. No.
Oh.
This is one of my funny notes. Okay, so he's a courtesan. Fun fact, Courtesan is a fancy word for prostitute. When you go back and if you reread it, it says that he was there to train to protect himself from his jealous patrons and their husbands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's totally, because that literally was the same thing that I thought. I'm like, oh, he was a fellow assassin. But in the reread, and then of course I read ahead a little bit, I'm like, oh, he's a prostitute.
Okay.
I was totally wrong. Yes.
Okay.
So
I mean, that makes sense. I just thought he was a handsome assassin, and that's why he's like going to ladies' houses and stuff, just having his fun. But that's interesting.
yeah. In the next set of chapters for next week's episode, we'll learn a little bit more about Archer's background and his relationship with Celaena. But yeah, courtesan means prostitute.
All right, so scratch that thought about the king taking out assassins.
But it was a good thought, though.
It could still be true with others in the future.
We'll see.
Not with Archer specifically. But again, we still want to know, why does the king care so much about Archer specifically? Maybe, what if Queen Georgina is out here doing something with Archer?
Get out of here. Get out of here.
And that's why the king wants him gone.
You were unhinged today, Lorraine.
All right. So after Celaena learns who her next target will be, she heads out and they start prepping the king's chamber for a council meeting. And Dorian is having some internal thoughts. And he's considering how well he actually knows Celaena and thinks about how she has changed, quote unquote. He says, or he thinks, Celaena hadn't seemed like herself just now. Actually, for the past 2 months since she'd been named the king's champion, she'd been like this. If she could kill people like this, then manipulating him into believing she felt something for him would have been all too easy. And I was like, no, Dorian, don't have those thoughts.
And I was like, yes, Dorian, leave Celaena alone. She doesn't want you.
No. But also, like, okay, what did you expect, though? She's an assassin. You knew that, what was going to become of her if she wins. They also wanted her to win as well. So it was expected that this was what was going to happen to her. But the bigger thing about this was that it confirmed to me that Dorian does not know what Celaena's actually doing. I don't think anybody really knows, right? That she's actually not taking out the targets.
Oh, yes. She's very explicit about this. She thinks about this many, many times. In every conversation she has with Nahimi and Kale, she has the recurring thought, nobody can know. This is for their safety. It is absolutely paramount that no one knows what she's really doing.
Because she just wants to make sure that they stay safe. And then it's also a risk to Celaena as well. But also given how close the king is with Dorian and what we think he may do as far as potentially influencing him with this evil and stuff, it would be especially dangerous for Dorian to know what Celaena's really doing.
So actually, I had a question for you about Dorian in this little section of the chapter. As Celaena leaves and Dorian is watching her, he has this thought where he says, if she could kill people like this, then manipulating him into believing she felt something for him would have been all too easy, making an ally of him, making him love her enough to face his father to ensure the appointed champion. Dorian couldn't bring himself to finish the thought. He'd visit her tomorrow, perhaps, just to see if there was a chance he was wrong, but he couldn't help wondering if he'd ever meant anything to Celaena at all. So my question was this. I wondered, do you think this is how Dorian truly feels, or if it's a pre-existing minor insecurity he has, but it's being heightened because he's being influenced by the King or Parenting's magic, like an organic thought, but it's really being exacerbated because the King and or Parrington perhaps are starting to influence him to try to create a divide.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess it would make sense. Dorian's kind of had those thoughts from the beginning, back in Throne of Glass. I always remember that one quote where he's like, she was looking at him like a mouse to play with, or I don't know, it was something like that.
A cat with her prey or something.
Yeah, he was always taking note of the fact that to him, it always felt like she was playing a game with him. But despite that, he still really loved her, or grew to love her and wanted her to love him back, I guess. But that is possible if that's an insecurity and if the magic works by influencing feelings that you already have, then it's definitely possible that the king could use that against Dorian.
I think I'm leaning more towards what you said, that it's probably just echoing a feeling that he's had pretty much all along, and aggravated by the fact that she broke him and has distanced him. But I was just wondering.
Yeah. All right. So in the next scene, Celaena goes down into the tunnel, specifically the one that meets the river and provides an escape route. Kaol ends up following her down there as well. From their conversation, we learned that Kaol is really worried about Celaena's missions and that he is aware that her behavior in front of the king is an act. To express his concern, he says, I have no idea what's happening to you, referring to her missions. I don't know if you're hurt or rotting in a gutter somewhere. Yesterday, I heard a rumor that they caught the killer responsible for Lord Neryl's death. I thought they meant you. I will say I was like very happy to hear that because I don't want Celaena to be alone and isolated. I'd really want her to have people that support her and care about her, even if they can't know everything. Yep. We also see that their bond has definitely gotten deeper. I know you're going to be very happy about that since you're Team Kaol, but I did think that was cute, though.
I like when they have a big hug, and it's very sweet, and she doesn't want to let go, and then he's like, God, you smell bad. I like that their relationship is still very playful and flirtatious. I think that has carried over from the first book. I like that you can tell the relationship has developed more, but at its core, it hasn't changed too much, right? That they're still the same people they were in their interactions are still carry the same lightheartedness.
I think Kaol's changed the most because in the first half of that book, he was very suspicious of Celaena and pretty guarded. He wanted to like her, but he was still like, no, she's a deadly assassin, yada, yada. Dorian interacting with her or his own feelings for her developing were conflicting, but you can see that those barriers have mostly melted at this point. So,
yeah.
Okay. On to the next section. So Celaena returns to her chambers after that, and we get some very important information. One, Celaena has been lying to the king and Kaol, and everyone else for that matter, about what she's really doing on her missions. And two, she has not been killing her targets. Instead, she gave them to the choice to disappear forever and found look-alike corpses to fake their deaths. And she
really
has
committed.
Oh, yeah, all the way, which I mean, that's pretty smart.
I know.
But she has let all 4 of her assignments disappear so far. I was definitely very relieved to hear this. We talked about this earlier, but I was like, yeah, she's the rebel, you know? But she also continues thinking about what the rebels would know that could actually be a threat to the king's plan, considering he had enslaved the entire continent at this point. Then she has a thought. There were other countries, of course, other continents with wealthy kingdoms like Wendlin that far away land across the sea. It had held out against his naval attacks so far, but she'd heard next to nothing about the war since before she'd gone to Endovir. I do have a little bit of a suspicion that the rebel movement involves magic. We know Nehemia and the people in Eoway know about word marks and their magic. Not everybody in Eoway, but Nehemia and her family. And this is really the only big enough thing that can pose a threat to the king that we know of so far, I think.
Yeah, I highlighted that quote too. And very similar to Celaena, I feel extremely frustrated because I just can't see what he would even want, because to Celaena's point, he's already conquered all of Aurelia, right? Hasn't conquered the entire world, but what more could he possibly want? To be honest, I've got nothing short of potentially expanding his conquest across the sea. But again, what does that really get him? And his other main problem is squashing the rebels. But they don't really seem to pose that much of a problem. It's more just a nuisance, and he wants to assert his control over them. And I can't see it. I can't figure out what his motivations are. I really can't.
I agree. Which again, I keep landing on this thought that it has to be related to these in-between demons and stuff to some extent. Yeah. We just don't have enough information yet. So
I think we're both in agreement that it is related to that, but it's just to what end or what purpose. That's where I really just cannot figure out what camp I'm in.
That's true. Because even if he did bring demons, like why? I'm gonna do, All right, that rounds out chapter 2. On to chapter 3. In this next chapter, we start off with Celaena having a nightmare about Cain in the Ritterrack. It appears that this is somewhat of a reoccurring nightmare. And there was 2 important notes I had about this section. So first, she has a thought where she says, after him flowed a wake of glowing green word marks, their strange shapes and symbols illuminating the ancient blocks of stone. And I noted this because we know there's references to the green glows and fires when discussing this glass castle. So to me, this just feels like the dream is trying to connect those dots of Cain being involved with the king to Celaena. I don't think she's made that connection yet, but maybe this is that background processing that you do in your dreams.
Your subconscious is like screaming at you.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully she picks up on it soon. The second note I had about this dream is that, quote, he, Cain, whispered her name, her true name, and she screamed as he, and then it cuts off. In the last book and previous episodes, we definitely brought up this reference to the fact that Celaena is not who she says she is, whether that's because she intentionally keeps that ultra secret or if it's because of it somehow being locked away from her own conscious mind. We're not entirely sure, but it's more than obvious that Celaena is not Celaena. She is someone else who is very strong and powerful, most likely. Yes. And we're all just out here twiddling our thumbs, waiting until her true identity is revealed.
Well, remember too, we discussed this in a previous episode. I feel like there's 2 camps of thought on the true identity. Is it just she's lying about her name, right? Is it an alias? Or another common trope in fantasy is having a true name that has magical connotations. So is it one or the other? Is it perhaps both? I'm firmly, I can't say I'm firmly in either camp, but I'm keeping it in the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. So after she wakes up from her nightmare, she meets Nehemia in the game park, and they're having a conversation. Celaena informs Nehemia that her next target is Archer Flynn, and Nehemia asks why. Celaena says, the king thinks that Archer is part of some secret movement against him, a movement here in Rifthold to get him off the throne. Nehemia responds with, surely no one would be that bold. The rebels hide out in the mountains and forests and places where the local people can conceal and support them. Not here. Rifthold would be a death trap. I thought that was interesting because obviously we know Nehemia is involved. Well, she's involved with a movement. I actually am not sure if what she's doing is the same rebel movement that the king is talking about in Rifthold. Probably not, right?
I can tell you most absolute certainty revealed in the book so far that she is not and does not have any connection to what's happening. Of course, we could get more hints and it could be revealed later that she is. I really do not believe so.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't under the impression that she really knew about that, but she does make a good point that being directly in Rifthold, it's very obvious. I'm sure the king keeps very detailed tabs on what's going on in his city. So
you have to remember too, Nehemia's goals are very different from the rebels in a way. I think the rebels, their primary goal is to overthrow the King of Adarlan, where I think Nehemia's goals and plans are more related to taking care of her citizens, bettering the conditions at the work camps, and minimizing how many citizens get sent there. Obviously, I think she would love to see the King of Adarlan overthrown, but I think that those 2 groups may have very different goals and different ways on how to get there. So it would surprise me at this point if Nehemia does get involved with that plot, because that would have major implications for her people. And ultimately, Nehemia is there to protect her people and take care of them the best way that she can, even under the King of Adarlan's rule.
That's a good point. Well, in this next sentence, it does seem she's pretty surprised. So she asks, what plans? And Celaena says, I was hoping you might know. She responds with, I don't, but if you learn anything, and Celaena just says, I'll see what I can do. And we see that Celaena lies to Nehemia, just as she does to Kael, to protect her. And she has a thought. She wasn't even sure if she wanted to know what the king was up to, let alone share that information. It was selfish and stupid, perhaps, but she couldn't forget the warning the king had given her that day. He crowned her champion. So again, Celaena just feels very conflicted about her role. She doesn't want to lie to her friends, but she has to in order to keep them safe. But she also doesn't want to be involved with the politics of what's going on because it's dangerous and to her pointless, because what are they really going to do? The king's just going to destroy everyone anyway. It's kind of a lost cause, I guess. So
Yeah. The read I get on this is that ultimately Celaena does not like the status quo, but she feels if she gets too involved, it puts everyone she cares about at risk, but also it could be taken as her embracing who she truly is and her fate. And she's scared of that, right? Because the moment she gets involved, the floodgates open and there's really no turning back. And so as the longer she can push off that inevitability, the longer that she doesn't have to face her past, her future, I mean, everything really.
she's really been in denial about Elena's messages to her about her fate and has really tried to stay out of that. She doesn't want to be involved at this point in time. So next, Nehemia also states that she's concerned about the conditions of the labor camp, which you had previously said, and it's rumored to be even worse relative to Endovir, which is crazy.
How
because
is that
Endovir,
possible?
yeah, it's like Endovir sounded pretty bad to me. But she's getting desperate because she says, the king will not meet with me. I must do something, Alentia. I must find a way to help my people. When does gathering information become a stalemate? When do we act? Celaena doesn't say anything back to Nehemia. It's clear that the situation is getting worse for the rebels in Eelway and really anyone that opposes the king. I do think that this is kind of a big breaking point, and I'm wondering if something big is going to happen. Like, will Nehemia take more action, right? Because right now she's just gathering intel and feeding that back just to help them avoid capture, is what I'm guessing. But I do wonder at what point is she going to counter with anything?
I gotta be honest, this is just the tiniest little inkling, but I am starting to worry for Nehemia's fate, because that to me indicates that she's going to take action. And I feel that it's only going to end one of two ways: in her death, her immediate demise, and or Celaena getting involved, it becoming a movement, them escaping and, fighting the good fight in Eelway. I'm worried about Nehemia. I'm worried about her.
Yeah. Because she's directly involved. And I do get a little bit of a bad feeling. I hope it's not super soon. That if she were going to get killed off, let her last another book at least, or I don't know, but
at least I know she's one of the best characters. Well, if she can make it through Crown of Midnight, we know that she's at least alive until Heir of Fire, because I don't even think she's in Assassin's Blade since it's a prequel, so we can just hold on for a little longer.
She's pretty strong, though. She's opened portals and sending them back. So I do think that it would be quite a fight to get her out of the picture.
True. Maybe it's like we discussed in the first book, that Celaena will help Nehemia escape from those secret tunnels, and Nehemia will have to leave Rifthold, but she'll make it to Eelway.
All right. To start off in chapter 4, Celaena and Chaol are now on a training run through the game park, and they are also having a conversation. Lots of conversations in these first several chapters. But Chaol thinks about how he is A, worrying about Celaena every time she worries for a mission, and then B, also about how he killed Cain, which I was like, are you gonna move on from this yet? No, I guess not. Very traumatizing for him.
Because he's a very decent and kind human being. He has a lot of humanity, okay?
So kind, so humane. Again, he doesn't regret what he did, but he does still feel guilty for killing a life. And Chaol asks Celaena, how often do you think about the people you've killed? And at first, Celena's like, what the hell? But then she realizes, she's like, how dare you? But then she realizes that he is referring to Cain, and she replies with, I'll never forget the people I've killed, even the ones I killed to survive. She then reassures Chaol by saying, what happened with Cain, that wasn't an assassination or even cold-blooded murder. What you did wasn't dishonorable. You will never forget killing Cain, but I will never forget what you did to save me either. And I thought that was very comforting and nice of her to say to Chaol, but it also reminds him of the line they have now crossed with the relationship, right? He knows this friendship could easily result in either of their deaths if the king were ever to find out or question his own loyalty and position. But I do think, again, it's just a very nice, what what's the word I'm looking for? A better word than nice.
Intimate?
Intimate. That was the word I was thinking. It was an intimate, comforting
Mm-hmm.
conversation that they had. And again, just adds to the deepening of their friendship at this point.
Yeah.
After that, they finish the run. And as they walk back through the garden, they run into, first off, several ogling ladies who are in love with Kale, I guess.
I thought that part was so funny.
Me too. I was like, ooh, okay, Kale, get it, Kale. But then they also run into Dorian, and he has his cousin, Lord Roland Haviliard of Maya. And there's 2 points I had about this interaction. One, it's clear that Kale does not like Roland, and Dorian likely doesn't either, though, you know, he can't really do much about it because it's his cousin, their family. And Celaena gets a weird feeling from the man as well. She doesn't like his vibe. And 2, the king has offered Roland a position on his council, and he happens to be starting this very day that they meet. So my questions are, why did the king appoint him? He seems suspicious, though we obviously have very little information about him to go off at this point in time. But even Dorian is skeptical of how useful Roland would be. He has a thought where he says, Maya was a small yet prosperous coastal city in Adarlan, but it held no real political power. It didn't even have a standing army, save for the city's centuries. So perhaps it has something to do with the king's ideas about Wendelin, like if it's on the coast, which I have to check the map. But
that would make sense. I sort of took it as, do you remember it's at the end of the class when Parrington and the king are talking, and the king said something to the effect of, there's still some others I'd like to try this power out on or use to my advantage or something. And we sort of speculated that perhaps he was going to use it to manipulate people on the small council. I wonder if maybe it's so that he can use Roland, specifically manipulating him with magic, and or to spy on Dorian. Because of the familial relation they share, Dorian's going to have to spend time with him. So I wonder if it's the king's way of getting another more intimate set of eyes on Dorian using Roland. Those are my only 2 thoughts on why he would do that, because I agree with Dorian for why Roland kind of seems useless, and he's always been more interested in the ladies than doing anything meaningful.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. How many more spies do you need? Does the king feel like Dorian would figure it out pretty quickly were he to use his magic on Dorian? And that's why he needs to use other people to gather intel? Because if you can just influence people, why not just do it directly on Dorian? Unless it's still too experimental. They can't guarantee that it's going to play out how they want it to, so they still need to run some tests on it before fully deploying it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But Maya is on the coastal side where Wendelin goes. So Maya's up here, and then there's an arrow that points to Wendelin that way. So I almost wonder maybe it's to gain access of Maya, and they could use it as like an outpost or like a launch point or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that, Celaena goes shopping, and the next scene that we have is when she's returning from shopping. You know, she's got all her bags and her frilly things. She clearly has spent a lot of money.
A lot of money.
She arrives back in her room to find Dorian there. Dorian attempts some flirtatious banter and reminds her that she still wanted to be friends previously. Those were her words. But Celaena doesn't really engage very much with him and remembers that ultimately he is the king's son. And it's clear that this encounter is pretty awkward. Celaena does feel bad about it because she still has some feelings for him. But Celaena just simply says that she needs to go back to Rifthold again after Dorian says if they can hang out or anything. And then says, do you want me to fight for you? Is that it? She just says, no, I just want you to leave me alone. And I was like,
Yeah.
This is sad. I still mourn this relationship, even though I know it wasn't going to work out. But a lot of their dynamics and her secrecy, a spoiler for Fourth Wing, is starting to give me a little bit of Violet and Xaden vibes to some extent.
Yeah.
I just have PTSD from secrecy about that stuff. Just get over it. Tell everybody what's going on and move on. You know what I mean?
There is a lot of that in Fourth Wing and Iron Flame for sure.
I know that romantically it's not going to work out, but I do hope that, they'll become friends again and be on good terms, so.
Yeah. I thought her response was a little harsh, honestly. So then I had to ask myself, why is she being that way, right? I do believe that she was genuine, that she wanted to remain friends with him, but for what reason would she have to literally tell him, leave me alone? And so I had a couple of potential reasons why. The first is she wants to just keep him safe and protect him, right? The more distance he has from her, the better off he'll be. If shit hits the fan and she's discovered, there's some cover and protection for Dorian if he's distanced from her. So that seems kind of likely to me. The second one, this is the least likely one, that she's really hiding her true feelings from him, that it's too hard for her to be around him, so she'd rather just, like damned lovers, that they can't be together. That seems like the least likely to me, but it is a possibility. And the last, this seems like the most likely to me. She knows that he still harbors feelings for her, and she wants to discourage him. She doesn't want to even give the impression that she's leading him on, and that becomes him to basically move on, and then they can actually have a meaningful friendship.
Yeah, I think it's probably the last reason that you gave. She just knows if he still has feelings, then he has hope. And if she gives him that hope, then he'll just keep trying. And we're like, no, you gotta
Move on, bro.
Yeah, gotta set the boundaries now. But yeah, anyways, that was the end of chapter 4. And next we have chapter 5. So to start us off, Celaena is hip-hopping around on the rooftops in Rifthold.
Yes, that's exactly what our stealthy assassin does. She's
hip-hopping. She's popping through the rooftops. But she's gathering intel on Archer Finn, her latest target. As she's sitting there watching what's going on, she reflects on how similar it feels to her past scouting missions with Sam, as well as the day of her betrayal and Sam's death shortly after. We also learn that the Assassin's Keep is actually in Rifthold. For some reason, I always just imagined it would be somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't think they do mention it in Thornglass. I always thought it'd be like in the middle of the desert, like really hard to get to. And it's like, nah, just in the other side of Rifthold.
That was my thought. So I was surprised to learn it was right there in the city.
Yeah.
But as she watches Archer leave a townhouse, she wonders whether she really wants to know the truth of what the rebels or the king are actually doing. This is a repeated thought that she's had. Then later, when she is back at the castle, Celaena talks with Chaol in his room. So she's sitting in a chair, lounging very casually, and she's studying a map of the city. And she pauses on a particular street, then asks Chaol, do you know who Rorik Farron is? Have you ever dealt with him? And Chaol responds with, no, but that's because Farron is dead. Celaena is very shocked to learn that he died. And we learn that Arobynn Hamel's personal guard, Wesley, took out Farron and his 3 top men. We also get a huge bit of info about that night. So this is how I pieced it together, and correct me if I'm wrong because I did have to read it a couple times. So Farron had tortured and killed Sam. So then the next night, Celaena had gone out to take Farron out as retribution. Wesley had warned her against going out because he likely knew it was a trap. But Celaena goes anyway, and then she is captured. Is that how you... Okay.
The only thing I would add would be she indicates that her and Sam were both hired to kill Farron, but he was just bait for a trap. So they go there thinking they're on a mission, and I suspect that they were both actually captured because I can't remember if she thinks it or says it, but she says something to the effect of she can still feel Farron's hands on her paralyzed body, indicating to me that they were both captured. Somehow Celaena was freed, escaped, or they, didn't kill her for whatever reason, but they did kill Sam. And then exactly what you said, she went back the next night and then, led to her capture and all that.
Okay. So after that, we had also learned that Wesley died going after Farron. And Kale said, we thought it was an attempt to balance the blood feud so that when the next crime lord ascended, they wouldn't view Arabin and his assassins as enemies.
Yes.
And I was a little confused by that because are they saying that Arabin was working with Farron?
No.
What was he trying to say?
Okay, so think of it this way. Imagine modern day city. There's two different mob bosses, right? And it's like, you get the east side, I get the west side. I won't mess with you if you don't mess with me kind of vibe. That's how I think of Farron and Arabin, right? I do my thing, you do your thing. You don't mess with my guys, I won't mess with yours. So I think because Wesley killed Farron and his 3 top men, someone's going to replace Farron, just like in a real life mob, right? You have the underboss who's going to take over. And I think Arabin wanted to minimize any fallout from that. So his way of appeasing the next crime lord was to kill Wesley himself as punishment for going rogue and sort of a peace offering to say, sorry for what happened. My guy went rogue. It was out of my control, but I punished him. It won't happen again, is how I interpreted that situation.
Oh, okay. But then why does she think that? Because then Celaena then reflects on the possibility that it was indeed Arabin that had betrayed her that night. I'm just confused. I could not wrap my head around this right now because I was like, I don't understand. If we're going with Celaena's theory that Arabin betrayed her, then Arabin told Farron where they would be.
Well, let me shake it out how I think it went down. I don't know what Arabin's motivations are, but I think Arabin wanted Celaena and or Sam killed. So he told them, hey, I've got a job for you. You guys need to go kill Rorik Farron, the crime lord. So Sam and Celaena think they're just getting a job from their boss. They're like, okay, yeah, let's go do it. They go to do it. It's clearly a trap because remember, she even says Wesley warned her. No, wait.
Yes, she said, Wesley had warned her not to go out.
They go. They get captured by Farron. They at least give Celaena a paralytic. They kill Sam. Somehow Celaena escapes, is rescued, etc. She goes back to the keep. She's locked in her room. She's not supposed to go out, but she does to go get retribution. Then she's caught and captured. Post that, because it's about 9 months after the fact that happens, that Farron ends up dead. I'm sure there was some grumblings about what happened to Sam and Celaena. I think ultimately Wesley, and again, this is all just pure speculation based on this little part of a chapter. I think Wesley was upset about what happened to Sam and Celaena. He decides to take matters into his own hands. He kills Farron and his top 3 guys. Arabin punishes Wesley for going rogue because ultimately, if Celaena's theory is right that Arabin was responsible for her capture and the death of Sam, Arabin wanted the outcome the way it was. And so he would even give him more reason to punish Wesley, 1, for killing Farron, but 2, for going against what he had wanted. And then you add the whole, he's trying to balance the scale so there's not a blood feud between the new crime lord and Arabin's people. All right. And then the last note I had, given what we know about Wesley, it almost kind of confirms that Arabin was the one that betrayed her because Wesley is Arabin's personal guard. How would Wesley know that it was a trap and be able to warn Celaena if he wasn't privy to that information by his proximity to Arabin, right? So that to me solidifies that Arabin had to be the one to orchestrate it. I mean, we've had these suspicions for a while now, just given comments that Celaena has made, and it just makes the most sense. Although, as to why Arabin did that, I have absolutely no thoughts on that. I have no speculation. I can't imagine why he would do that. I think the only thing I ever thought was like maybe he got jealous of Celaena because she was super successful and he was jealous. But I mean, she worked for him. She made him money. I don't know. So I definitely want to know, again, where's Arabin Hamill? What is he doing? But see, now as I'm saying this, thinking about how that is kind of counterintuitive because back when Celaena was in Dovier, she thinks that Arabin may have bribed the guards not to sexually assault her and that he may have still been trying to protect her in small ways. So I don't know. It's very confusing and I want to know where the fuck Arabin Hamill is.
Same. Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. So after that conversation, Celaena also reveals to Kale that her companion was Sam. Previously, she'd talked to Dorian about Sam before, but Kale didn't know about Sam. And she also confides to him that she loved him. And then Kale also has a moment of vulnerability and reveals that the reason he's Roland is because Roland seduced Lithian, Kale's former lover at the time, into sleeping with him and leaving Kale for him. And he says, I don't know what happened to her, but after that point, it was done. So,
Oh, yeah.
sad though. I felt really bad for Kale and Celaena,
No.
obviously, both of their experiences, but
I know. Yeah, well, I like that Kale's like, I know what happened to me is not quite the same. And I'm like, yeah, we're talking about totally different experiences here. But still, yeah, it was pretty shitty for Kale. I can imagine, especially because Roland is such a smarmy buck. I hate that guy.
I know I just get really bad vibes off of him immediately. He seems really skeezy.
Yes, yes.
So by the time they finish their conversation, it's quite late, and Kale walks Celaena back to her room, but she cannot sleep, so she decides to head to the library. Now, at this point, it's like midnight, which we all know nothing good is happening at midnight in this castle, so...
Or only good things are happening at midnight.
Oh, I guess, maybe. Yeah,
but not for Celaena. For everybody else,
Celaena.
not for her.
So she enters the library, and of course she sees a creepy looking figure, and her quote was, but something about the figure standing between the open library doors made some ancient primal part of her send a warning pulse so strong that she didn't take another step. So again, this is another reference to this general sense that Celaena has about being able to feel the evil, and it's a little bit of a clue to her powers, but also, what the fuck is this figure? Who is it? Because
I think more what is it is the question.
Yeah, what is it? So the description of it is, it sniffed again and took a step toward her. The way it moved, like smoke and shadow, a faint warmth bloomed against her chest, then a pulsing blue light. The eye of Elena was glowing. The thing halted and Celaena stopped breathing. It hissed and then slithered a step back into the shadows beyond the library doors. So obviously it's some kind of demony thing related to...
Has to be,
right? But then my question becomes, is there another portal open somewhere? How did it get there?
Oh, I mean, it would have to be. Somebody else is using word gates to open a portal. It would absolutely have to be.
Or maybe it's been here for a while. Maybe it's been here the whole time, and it just never
emerged.
Had revealed it. Yeah, emerged until now. If it did come from a portal, then, you know, who summoned it? Did it enter on its own? Like, I don't know. Is it strong enough to just do that? Was the king involved? So many questions.
Well, I wonder too, because remember, Celaena, I think it's right before this, she hears the clock tower chiming. And then she goes to the library. And so maybe the clock tower chiming, we know that's a portal, it's a word gate. So maybe something about the hour, there's like a weak point. I don't know. I'm really just going off the rails here, but I'm definitely going to be on lookout for weird hooded figures in the castle.
Right. I did think it was interesting because it could tell that she was protected, right? Because it glowed, it hissed, and then ran away from her.
Yes.
So it too could feel that there was some kind of power in Celaena, probably from the eye of Elena, or maybe just from herself too. But the combination of those things made it stop, because otherwise maybe it would have attacked her. So
yeah. Also, I just have to point this out here, as the eye of Elena glowed blue. We have speculated that blue is associated with magic and the gem inside, because that little blue light probably saves Celaena.
Good point.
Yeah.
So anyways, she has no idea what it is, but she was not going to stick around to find out. So she hustles back to her room and, quote, couldn't stop hearing that cursed word again and again. Plans. So that was interesting to me, because the fact that it says plans definitely means, as we've speculated before, a larger movement of some sort going on. I had a random thought in this moment. What if the rebels in Rifthold are actually fighting against the king, knowing that he is involved with this evil and portals and doing some shady stuff to some extent. And that's why the king is like very hell-bent on getting rid of them. I don't know. That's just like a weird speculation, but
Yeah. I'm not sure how they would know. It's possible they're just like, he's evil, period. So he's probably involved in well shit. So we're going to do whatever we can to get rid of him. But definitely in the realm of possibilities.
we don't know. Gotta keep reading. So we are now finally on our last chapter, chapter 6. At this point, Celaena decides to head down to Elena's tomb, hoping to get some answers about her most recent creepy encounter. As she stands in front of the tomb, she's thinking about whether she actually wants to go in there, because again, she doesn't know if she really wants the answers to the questions that she has. And all of a sudden, the skull knocker speaks to her and scares her shitless.
Yeah, I love that part. Also, as a quick note about this entire interaction, I read the physical copy, but I also listen to the audiobook. And the choice of the audiobook narrator for Mort's voice was really, really funny. And it really fit perfectly. It's kind of like a New Yorker accent. I don't know, but I really liked it. I thought it was really funny.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe
Okay.
Boston. It just gives like a Northeast vibe, but it's interesting.
Okay. That's funny. That she was fitting. So she has some questions for it because she's like, how are you speaking to me? And he's like, magic, obviously. And Celaena says, but magic doesn't work anymore. And Mort says, new magic doesn't, but the king cannot erase old spells made with older powers, like the ward marks. Those ancient spells still hold, especially ones that imbue life. So again, this confirms one of our thoughts earlier about the way that magic works. And we learned that, again, word marks, as Nehemia also revealed to us, that they are a separate type of older, ancient, more powerful magic. And so they can still operate. But I did questions pop up from this, and I want to know what other spells still exist. And then also what other things may have been imbued with life. Has the king imbued anything similar? And maybe that's how he can spy around the castle or whatever it is. What did you think about that?
So those are all really great questions that I think I pretty much echo the same sentiments. I wrote that comment really seems like foreshadowing about the future, especially the part that old magic can't be erased. That immediately led me to the thought of, at some point in time in the series, I feel that we are going to be able to call upon some ancient spell or enchantment to help us in a time of need or to vanquish an enemy. Remember, also, we did have a discussion in the last episode because we are pretty certain there's going to be fae in this book, right? Mm-hmm. And where are they? And my theory was either they used a word gate and they're hanging out in some realm, or they have extremely, extremely old enchantments that basically veil them from being accessed by the outside world. So if we know that ancient magic still has power in this universe, then it does make that a more likely possibility. I did get hung up a little bit where they said, especially ones that imbue life, because that's a really specific phrase and specific use case for magic. And what king or like anyone really, what would they be imbuing with life and for what purpose? We're talking about a door knocker that was imbued with life, right? It's not really super useful in reality, but does open up the possibility for more magic that's going to be used in future books, or perhaps this book, but probably future books.
Well, maybe these and other objects that become imbued with life, maybe they are all special in that they're there to protect. So that's what makes them extra.
Oh, yeah.
Special, because Mort is on Elena's tomb, like guarding.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why they needed to be especially powerful.
Also, Mort tells Celaena that King Brandon himself put him there to watch over the tomb. And let's say hypothetically, if someone was coming in there to destroy the tomb, Mort somehow has a magical ability to contact King Brandon, so Brandon could intervene, or I don't know. So maybe it's also not only protective and watchful, but in a way that like
he's like the bridge, like a bridge.
Yes, that's perfect. Exactly. So again, all idle speculation here based on a very small amount of text.
Yeah.
But, you know, if there's an ability to speculate, we're gonna do it.
Exactly. Anyways, Celaena then asks the knocker for its name, which this is where we learn. And he instead asks, "What is your name?" And she says, "Celaena Sardathian." She ground out. The school barked a laugh. "Oh, that is funny. The funniest thing I've ever heard in centuries." And this keeps coming up again and again, so we'll just keep pointing it out. But continued references to Celaena's name not being her true or her real name, and just more evidence of that, basically.
I need to know who she is. I'm tired of this. I'm starting to get annoyed.
I'm just ready for her to go full power.
Yes, just embrace it.
Yes. So Mort then informs Celaena that Elena will not be able to visit again until she regains her strength, but she did leave a message to get passed on. Celaena has a couple thoughts before she receives the message. For one, she notes that Damaris, King Gavin's sword, helped Gavin see only the truth. And then some of the scratches on Damaris were likely from the fight against the Dark Lord Erewhon, who had led an army of demons and the dead against the continent. That's just a little bit more information, again, referring back to presence of the Dark Lord and everything that's going on with him. I do think that Damaris will probably come into play again, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. And there was something else I noted about Damaris too. She says, its hilt was silvery gold and had little ornamentation save for a pommel in the shape of an eye, first and foremost, like the eye of Elena. Secondly, no jewel lay in the socket. It was only an empty ring of gold. So the eye of Elena has a gem in it. I'm assuming that is imbued with magical properties, maybe imbued with life. I don't know. Just picking up on the word imbued there. But it does not seem coincidental to me that the pommel is in the shape of an eye, but also that it's missing a gem. And I wonder if that is some foreshadowing that the gem is of great power, and once it's reunited with the sword, that it will strengthen or magnify the power of the sword. And I wonder if maybe that's the only sword in existence that can actually slay the great evil. So again, wild speculation here. I wonder if part of Celaena's story is going to be going on the wild goose chase to find this gem to reunite it with the sword so that she can use it to slay the great evil. So I picked up on that and I was like, ooh, because why would you point that out? Who cares about that detail? And then, of course, like you said, where she says, some legends claim that when Gavin wielded Damaris, he would see only the truth, and that was why he had been crowned king, or some nonsense like that. Seems like a throwaway line, but I just feel that is intentional. And Damaris, when you think about the context of what we've read in the first book and a little bit of the second book, Damaris comes up a lot. It is mentioned many, many times and has saved Celaena at least once already. And so I feel that Damaris is an important sword and that we're going to need it.
Yeah. Maybe it has the ability to seek out what is evil too, like once it gets the jewel back to it, or maybe it works in combination with the amulet as well, because the amulet was presumably Elena's first, and then she gave it to Celaena to protect her. And I'm assuming that whatever is going on with that is connected to Mars as well, because Elena and Gavin were married, so it would make sense that the amulet and the sword also go together in that manner too. So yeah, very curious.
All right. Promptly after she makes the observations about Damaris, she then also makes notes about Gavin's armor. So I do wonder if perhaps at some point Celaena will be reunited with Elena's armor. I would imagine that any armor that Elena had was probably a Fae make, which implies to me that either just physically stronger, better than what humans would have, or maybe imbued with some serious magic, etc. And that armor may become really critical to Celaena's journey and her survival in any kind of battle with evil. Maybe it's a throwaway line, but feels a little too intentional. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that as well.
Yes. Okay. So after these thoughts that she has about Damaris, about the armor and everything going on in the tomb, she finally asks Mort for the message. And he says, whether you like it or not, you are bound to the fate of this world. As the king's champion, you are now in a position of power, and you can make a difference in the lives of many. Cain and the Ritterak were just the beginning of the threat to Aurelia. There is a far deadlier power poised to devour the world. That's pretty ominous, because we realize that this is not just about the king, Cain, and the king's plan. Like, it is on a much larger scale. Almost feels like even the king is threatened by this.
Yeah.
Because it'll just destroy the whole world. So
I was going to say, it sort of seems like a catastrophic world-ending kind of evil. So
yes, right. So then she also realizes that everything is connected to the king and his plans, because Mort says you must discover where the king's power comes from and what he plans to do before it's too late. I really took note of that word where, because it's referring locationally. And so is there an object from which the power wells? Can the king tap into it, or is he sourcing it from somewhere and like pulling it out? And that's how he's able to have all this access.
Yeah. Remember in the first book, he's gone almost the entire book and he goes somewhere mysterious that no one knows. So maybe he's going to some kind of well of magic or something. I don't know. Very possible.
Right. And then the last discussion that they have before Celaena leaves is that we get one more reference to Celaena's parents. So Mort says, I'm sorry about your parents' death that night. It was. And then he's cut off because Celaena responds with, don't you ever talk about my parents. And Mort says, you're that selfish, that cowardly. Why did you come down here tonight, Celaena? To help us all or just to help yourself? Elena told me about you, about your past. So obviously, how would she know? And is it because of this access to the dead, and therefore she knows about Celaena that way, like via her parents? But it's also very clear that Celaena is not ready to process what happened to her parents yet, and still feels very angry about their deaths. We don't know why or how it happened, but it was definitely a very traumatic and probably just crazy event that occurred. So
yeah, absolutely.
And that's all that we have for the analysis, folks. We're done. Just kidding.
That's all.
We're almost done. Before we leave, we do have our favorite moments to share. So let's get into that. What were your favorite moments?
Thank you for asking. I had just a couple. So the first is when Chaol and Celaena are running and he's feeling guilty about Cain, and he asks her, do you still think about all the people you've killed? And Celaena thinks that he's about to chastise her for her past, and she gets hot real quick and says, if you think passing judgment on me before I've had breakfast is in any way a good idea, and then he cuts her off. But I didn't like that. It's so funny. She went from like 0 to 100 in about 3 seconds. Celaena is definitely one of those people that you do not talk to until she's had coffee and breakfast. She is not a morning person. And I think that is so funny. And then I love that all the ladies go to the garden at dawn to check out fine ass Chaol. I think that is so funny. I'd probably do it myself, to be honest. But of course, I would actually talk to him because I am scared. Unlike the ladies. I really like Mort as a character. I think he's funny. I like that he is not intimidated by Celaena at all. He's my new Philippa for this book. I think he's really funny. So I hope that she has a few more interactions with him, like when she goes down to the tomb. I'm hoping it wasn't just a one-off, but those are my 3 for this set of chapters. What were your favorite moments?
I definitely agree about Mort. So I had a couple of this quotes. Celaena says, but you're magic. And then Mort says, everything in this world is magic. Thank you ever so kindly for stating the obvious. He's so sassy.
Yes.
And then she says, I'm so glad you finally found me worth speaking to. And then Mort responds with, why should I speak to someone who doesn't even have the courtesy to greet me or even knock?
Yeah.
All right. Mort's got some sass. He's spicy character. And yeah, I hope that she continues having conversations with Mort, because I'm sure Mort knows a lot of things. So
yes, yeah.
And then my next favorite one was when Chaol and Celaena are meeting in the tunnel, and he hugs her, and then he says, God's a bug, you smell horrible.
I know. Yeah, well, she probably did.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
wrong.
she hadn't showered in a while, so I'm not smelling great. And then my last favorite moment was just when we learned Celaena is not actually killing the targets. I really like that. That was
Oh,
just like
yeah.
a nice character reveal to be like, she's still very much a good person, so nothing to worry about on her end.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that too. I'm glad that her character, honor, sense of self is still protected in that way. So I was very happy to see that too.
Totally. All right. So that rounds out our very first episode to start Crown of Midnight. Thank you guys all so much for joining us for another episode of the Booked on Fantasy podcast. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, or share it with all your friends who love fantasy fiction as well. You can also keep up with us on a daily basis by following us on social media. You can find all the links to those below in the episode description. And yeah, that's all we have for you guys today. Stay nerdy, everyone, and we'll catch you next week for Crown of Midnight episode 2. Bye!
Bye. Celaena and Kale focus on their work in companionable. I knew that word was going to give me trouble even when I typed it. Damn it. Hold on. You cannot. Oh, I'm offline. No. They just ding dong ditched me. They knocked.
Oh, they pranked you.
Ladies. Mommy's recording and I'm knocking on the recording, okay?